Welcome to the Omnia Sol Art Show, the glitch art video talk show hosted by Omnia Sol. Orange Juice and Hedgehog Dilemma 2, Evangelion as a trans metaphor.
Welcome back to the Omnia Sol Art Show. I, of course, am your host, Omnia Sol, and today we have the second half of my interview with Samantha from Cathode GayTube on YouTube talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion. So welcome back to the second half of the interview and enjoy. Yeah, it's so good. And it makes the I know it gets like clowned on a lot, but it makes and we're going like full spoilers in this. So if you have not watched Evangelion, then go watch it. Or, honestly, I don't think spoilers are that bad, to be honest, because I've had like things given to me about certain media that like are considered spoilers, and it kind of like makes me like certain things better because you can kind of like see the story, and like it's easier to dissect as opposed to everything being a surprise. But the ending that gets kind of clowned on in the original series of everyone, like when Shinji decides, like, despite all the trauma, despite everything he's gone through, existence is still better than non-existence, because we can't even like fathom non-existence, because even the conception, well, it's not existence or non-existence, but
it's being an individual versus being one with all people.
Yeah. I guess I framed it as existence versus non-existence because he loses himself which granted we can talk more in depth about that, because I'm curious your thoughts on that, if that's the kind of interpretation of it. But the fact of like everyone in the circle like clapping to him and saying like congratulations, you don't really like, despite how the media says like, oh, everyone gets a participation trophy, like that's not really the case and has never really been the case. Even if you did get like a participation trophy, it's like most people don't get the flowers while they can still smell them. And so it is very much like up to you to kind of just like learning your own like self-worth as a person, and like trying to apply that to yourself.
I mean, I don't know, I personally don't really care about what people think of. If they think that was bad, then like, okay, like what, don't watch it, I don't care. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really cool that Shinji was like, holy shit, even though I feel awful, I know that being able to feel and being able to connect with people in any small way is the whole point of being a person. And that to sacrifice that would be sacrificing a lot more than the immediate unfortunate circumstances that he finds himself in. There's the whole hedgehog's dilemma thing, which is like hedgehogs, when they want to cuddle and be warm, they have to be careful because they're so spiky. They don't want to hurt each other, and they don't want to get hurt. So they have to find the right distance to be from another hedgehog so that they can be intimate but not injured. And I talk about that all the goddamn time, and nobody ever realizes it's from Evangelion, and it's very disappointing. But
that's so good, and I had forgotten that was like from Evangelion too. Like
that's the whole show. Like that's the entire show is Shinji trying to figure out how, like with Misato, like how does he trust her to be this maternal person while at the same time like dealing with these like very latent sexual urges. And with Asuka, like how is he honest and tell her how he feels about her while still being so intimidated by her. And like with his dad, like how can he cope with these feelings of not of wanting to make him proud, but also like being so resentful. So deciding that he was gonna be a hedgehog instead of a glass of orange juice was really fucking intense. And I think he deserves a round of applause. I clap along every time I watch that because I am so proud of him because he did such a good job. He saved the day. Like, he did it.
Yeah. I don't know if people didn't like it as much as just like, it's just such a funny way to like end a show. Like, I thought it was very funny when I saw it, but I really, really liked it. Like, it's just, it's, I don't know. It's such a, I had never seen that in a, obviously there's the trope of, in a lot of movies, of just the riding off into the sunset. And this was kind of like a version of that, but to have all like the characters, even the penguin, like clapping was so good. And he does deserve the claps. So going back to the, so deciding to be, it wasn't deciding to be something rather than nothing. It was more deciding to be kind of like a person, like an individual, as opposed to, I guess the third impact, like,
do I explain the ending of Evangelion now?
Yes, please. So,
ZLA's whole prerogative was that they wanted to become immortalized by having their souls be preserved in an Eva. And that was their whole thing, is they wanted the limitless power of the Evas at their immediate disposal. Because all of the Evas have a human soul in them. In the case of Unit 0 and Unit 1, it's Yui's soul. And in the case of Unit 2, it's Asuka's mother's soul, which is why Asuka's mother lost her goddamn mind, is because a part of her soul was removed. With Unit 3, it's, I guess it's probably one of Toji's parents or something. I think it would have been cool if his sister had died and like his sister's soul had been in Unit 3, but we didn't really get to explore that. But with the end of Evangelion and the opening of the doors of Gulf and whatever, that's all of humanity being converted into like their primordial physical state of basically being LCL, being the orange juice, like what happened to Shinji when his sync rate was at 400% and he disappeared. But their souls are preserved, and like we see them like swirling around and being condensed into the black moon. And the whole point of the third impact in that context, the whole point of Gendo facilitating the third impact is that he wanted to be reunited with Huey in Unit 1. So the whole third impact thing was that everybody was going to lose their physical forms, but have their souls preserved in a way that there would be no boundaries between people. The AT fields are just manifestations of ego, not in like a big ego inflated sense of self sense, but ego is in your delineation of where do you stop as a person and where does somebody else begin. And being able to put up that wall to protect yourself from like physical attacks in addition to like emotional stuff is the whole thing of the AT field. So for Shinji to say like, no, we're gonna maintain our borders as people, and we're gonna compromise and accept that we're never gonna 100% be able to understand people, that's worth it, because when you do make those connections, it's so wonderful because you get to be yourself and you get to see how you get to interact with other people. Kaji was explaining that to Shinji in one of their first interactions, talking about how like a person can never really understand another person, especially men and women. He said something like the divide between men and women is a river. It's like an uncrossable river or something. And that totally plays into the whole thing because Shinji is surrounded by women all the time, with Rei, Asuka, Misato, Ritsuko, all of these women who he's trying to interact with in a way that he can be comfortable, but also like not get completely fucking steamrolled all the time. And it sure would be easier for him if he didn't have to be a person and he could just be a sort of vague consciousness interlinked with all other consciousnesses, completely removed from any sort of feelings of rejection or failure. avoiding rejection is kind of his whole thing. He doesn't want to fail because he knows that people won't like him anymore. The only reason he pilots the Eva is so that people will like him. And with Rey, he asked Rey, like, why do you pilot the Eva? And she says that it's her link to other people, to Gendo specifically. So even like even the pilot's motivations to pilot the Evas is for the sake of being closer to other people. So to be doing all of this like insane violence and doing all this crazy shit, all for the sake of closeness with others, instead of just telling people how you feel, it's, I don't know, part of it is like disappointing because like, I'm sorry, Shinji, that you felt like you had to do that and that the world made you feel like you had to sacrifice so much in order to gain relatively little. But on the other hand, it's kind of a testament to how important other people are, that these pilots would be willing to sacrifice so much for the sake of closeness with others and for the sake of preserving others. And that's kind of the whole reason why it's like such a big deal when Shinji does it. When Shinji rejects instrumentality, is because he's saying that all of this work that I've put in, I've realized that what it was all really about was preserving the potential to make those connections and committing to being myself and being able to get to know somebody as a person instead of everybody being combined into this sort of shared consciousness. And it's really tempting all the time to want to sacrifice yourself as a person for the sake of being close with other people, And yeah. I definitely learned a lot about that from that show.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, just that like going back to that metaphor, the porcupine and the orange juice is like the no barrier, the no AT field of thinking of like, it's like the orange juice might like sustain someone else, quench their thirst for a little bit, but you lose like in the entirety of yourself. And I'm just like thinking back on like, past like romantic or interpersonal relationships where people really do like completely like lose their self and just everything is for the other person, for the in very like unhealthy relationships like that, and that you don't have that AT field. And it's interesting because I think because a lot of times I think on like a cosmic level, I do like to think of humanity as this like as one being, as like we are just these individual cells in a greater being. Like the species of humanity itself is just like one thing, as opposed to us all being these little individuals and like little like, and it doesn't like work really well with to think that way with how the lies we've been taught with like American capitalism either, because it's like we're all supposed to be our individual person with our individual world and our individual cars, as opposed to like more like public universal transportation. But it's interesting to think about like finding yourself and your place and having that like protection of yourself and your worth while simultaneously being part of this like bigger picture, as opposed to like completely losing yourself in this bigger picture.
Absolutely. I think that kind of calls back to what I said earlier about Gendo and Zile and the sort of having the entirety of humanity's resources being put towards this Eva program, because the angels were indiscriminate. They just saw all humanity as something that needed to be removed from the planet. So even though individual people might have felt, it's just like with any sort of in-group, out-group stuff, you can maintain your individuality while being part of a larger group, and you sort of lose that individuality when you are persecuted for belonging to that group, So I don't think anyone even realized that in the show that they were already all united. They were all together, because if they weren't, they would have been completely eliminated. So that was actually Kaoru's whole thing, is that he was so fascinated by Shinji and by the other Lilin, or people, that he changed his mind. And he was like, yeah, I changed my mind. Angels, we're all right, but people are pretty cool. You guys should stick around. You guys are okay.
Yeah. And that's pretty amazing that it was that connection with Shinji is what made him like realize it, where if it was like if it had been with like Gendo, then it would have been completely different,
Yeah.
Because it's like Gendo is so like cold and heartless.
And again,
to an extent, obviously he loved his wife, but like I don't know if you would call that love, like cloning her and making her fight in a robot.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet if Gendo really ever loved Yui, or if he was just taking advantage of her for the sake of her connections, because that's how we met Fuyutsuki.
Yeah.
But earlier I'd mentioned that people are really bad at expressing themselves in Evangelion. Kaoru, like right out the bat, was like, Shinji, I think you're really neato. I think that you're cool, and I love you. I think you're great. And I'm like gonna hold your hand while we're taking a shower. It's like totally cool. And that like rocked Shinji's shit. Like it like fucked him up, because he was like, I can't believe I made this connection with somebody who ended up being this gay alien who I had to fucking tear his head off. So Shinji found himself close to somebody like he had always wanted, and then he immediately had to kill them. And despite that, he still chose to maintain that reality, because he understood that like that was kind of the whole point, is that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the sake of everybody, but that doesn't mean that you have no value like as a person.
All right. I hope you all are enjoying part 2 of my interview with Samantha about Neon Genesis Evangelion. We are going to go ahead and play our song of the night. This is another song from Neon Genesis Evangelion that is on Sunshine Tapes Volume 2 on bandcamp.com, omniasol.art.bandcamp.com. The song is called Orange Juice Paradox and is very much influenced by my conversation with Samantha about the hedgehog, the orange juice, the AV field, the barrier we put between ourselves and others, and being a hedgehog and trying to be known but not trying to hurt each other at the same time. And I really hope you enjoy it, and we will be back with you after the song. Absolutely. This was such a good, I'm very excited for this episode because this is such a good talk. We're coming up on an hour.
I have like so much more to say. So whatever, however you want to do it, like I'll keep going, or we can tie it up, or whatever you want to do. If you had any other notes you wanted.
Yeah, we can tie it up, or we can keep going and make it a longer episode, or maybe like cut it into 2 episodes, whatever you're feeling. What else do you want to discuss? Like,
well, I will say, I definitely do have an entire episode's worth of discourse about the fact that Rey is a trans metaphor, but we can get to that another time.
I kind of want to. Yeah, let's get into that now. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be as articulate with it as I could be because it's been a couple weeks since I took notes on it, but basically, like, I mean, like I said earlier with Asuka, like, by making herself more sexually available, she was trying to establish her adult femininity and maintain a sense of intrigue among people. Whereas with Rey, like, the synthetic nature of her whole existence made it really hard for her to feel like she was worth connecting to, you know? And how could something so manufactured be of any value, you know? And so much of gender identity is manufactured, whether or not people recognize it or not. So in some ways it's more manufactured, you know, like medically you can acquire traits that signify one gender or the other, or neither, or both, or whatever. And it's just really weird to carry around the knowledge that something procedural had to happen in order for you to be the person you are today. And for Rey, who is, I mean, there's boxes of Rey body parts to make that she can swap in and out as needed. It's in order to make her more or less of whatever is required of her at the moment. Is I don't know, it resonates, you know? You recognize little bits of feeling and motivation in that sort of stuff that I think applies to gender diverse communities.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah, because I feel like I've had that thought about Ray, but then not had the kind of words around it to like articulate that. And I think you did I think you explained that like really well too. Like, yeah, because it's so like a lot of it is like her trying to figure out who she is, and then like even like coming to the realization of like, oh, like I'm, you know, part of this person, I'm part of that person, and then also trying to like come to terms with like I am my own person and I have value, as opposed to just like before, where it's like she very much views herself as just, even though she has like thoughts and emotions that are like formulating, she views herself as like, no, I just exist like to help this cause, and because of like Akari made me, you know, like, and there's so much too going into the kind of like psychology too of Gendo Akari being this like kind of metaphorical, obviously he's Shinji's father, but he's also this kind of like metaphorical super ego of society that like all these characters have to deal with, because he is in charge of NERV, and they're all trying to like, you know, thinking they're serving the like this cause of saving humanity, but then at the same time it's like really, like as you were saying earlier, like being like manipulated. And so like people like finding their self-worth and just like thinking of that, of like gender, when you are like kind of your parents' expectations, and then like societal expectations of like trying to like, with, for me, for instance, like with being non-binary, of like never being able to like, no matter how hard I try, like I cannot like be the man that like people want to perceive me to be, because I'm not that, you know.
Yeah. Totally.
And yeah, so I don't, it's very interesting. I like that a lot, as like Ray as this like kind of trans metaphor or archetype.
Yeah. There's also like with Shinji, he's afraid of being close to people, and he pushes them away because he doesn't want to be rejected by them. He doesn't want people to see that he's a coward and that he actually sucks, and he's terrified that people will realize that and abandon him, which is why he's always running away. It's because he's trying to get away from everybody before they can get away from him, you know. But with Rei, she doesn't bother, because she understands in her mind that she has no value because she's so replaceable and so artificial. It's, you know, the Evas are described as being mechanized, artificial, big giant robots, but like I said earlier, like they're people. Like they have feelings and shit, and they bleed, and they care about stuff. Like Unit 1 cares about Shinji and protects him. And even Asuka, towards the end of the series, realizes that Unit 2, spoilers, Unit 2 has been harboring her mother's soul and has been there for her the whole time, even if she hasn't been able to connect with it because she's been distracted with fucking teenage drama bullshit. But
yeah,
that's sort of that motif of like what counts as real, like what counts as organic versus mechanized, what's natural and what's artificial is it's very much relatable. That sort of motif of like mechanized women is very much a trans femme experience, I would say.
It'll be interesting too with the video, since we're going to be doing the analog. Like a lot of the show ends up being like kind of this discussion of like analog and digital, and kind of the difference and the cohesion of the two. Because I mentioned my kind of like idea for the video, and you're like, oh, that's just like the Avas, where it's like, yeah, you're doing this like analog where like maybe you can see that as like potentially more organic, even though it's still like, you know, technology with like more digital, and how those kind of like interact with each other.
Yeah, I mean, even at like a fundamental level, all electronics are, you know, an exchange of current. That's like a fundamental fact of how electricity works. So even though there might be more complex systems that use more abstraction, so things like digital circuits, once you start to look at more base digitization, stuff like logic gates and switch mode, analog to digital conversion, you start to realize that digital information is just analog information being communicated in binary states. Feel free to tune out or cut this part out, but
no, I love it. Like, yeah. If people are like watching this long too, then obviously, like, I feel like, you know,
yeah.
if people are watching the show in general, it's like it's talk about whatever we want. But I just love that, and like, yeah, the sense of like that. No, like, because I've honestly like even with doing video art, I've struggled to like understand the difference between like analog and digital. It's like, I understand it's like a VHS tape. It's like, it's analog because it's like on this, like, you know, the imagery, the sound is all there on this magnetic tape, as opposed to like a DVD or a Blu-ray, which is a disc that holds these like digitized files. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, okay, it's either like light going, you know, this machine projecting this image, or it's like the disc with like a laser reading it. Either way, it is these like electric currents going through.
With VHS, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
Oh, just the last thing I wanted to say is that there still is, no matter how technological it becomes, there still is this organic nature to all technology, in the sense of like everything comes from the earth. Like electricity is just this, like, it's this form of making energy. It is this like Promethean taking fire from the gods, like cultivating lightning, if you will. And then even the plastic or the metal that makes up our devices is all like from the earth, you know, even that the plastic is like derived from oil, which is like everything in our existence is like organic. And I roll my eyes like as far back as I can when people are like, oh, everything, like I'm all natural, especially when it comes to like certain like products, or like, or even like when people get into talk of like medicine and drugs and that sort of thing, of like, it's like, no, literally everything that exists is like, even if it was made in a lab, it still is of organic material, you know?
Well,
but yeah, what were you?
I would disagree with that, because I'm big on like literalism, and like organic literally means like it's got carbon in it. Like something, organic materials are like polycarbons and like sugars and stuff like that. So in that sense, no. But in the sense of everything is of universal origin, I would say yes. There's nothing that we can create that isn't based in the interconnection of the entire history of the universe. Like iron comes from exploding stars, you know?
Yeah.
And the properties that give carbon the ability to be the basis of life on Earth are atomic. They're the ability for carbon to form bonds with other with other atoms in order to form these complex molecules that we don't really see in a lot of other elements as regularly or as evenly distributed through the universe. But even like, if we look at like an analog video signal, it's made up of several layers of analog information about the amplitude of the different colors and the timing of the sweep oscillator. But if we look at digital signals, they're full of information about the same stuff, but just in a different format. Sort of going back to the trans thing, but hormones are they are chemical signals that our brain receives and then completes instructions based on what signals it receives. So with the AVAs, there are a lot of times during the show where the control center will be sending an emergency eject signal to the AVA in order to try to preserve the pilot. And it won't work. Like Toji was held captive in AVA 3, held hostage. And Shinji was held in AVA 1 because it was, fulfilling its own agenda. And Asuka was kept was unable to be ejected from AVA 2 when it was being psychologically attacked by that one angel that was like up in space. I don't know if you remember that. So that really relates to how people sometimes can be completely unresponsive to very, very important signals that something is wrong. And there will be a really blatant signal of the world that you need to preserve yourself a little bit better, but just you'll be unable to respond to that, So that's another very human thing about the AVAs, is that for all of the exquisite engineering and all of the thousands of hours of research that went into their production and the millions of extremely precise details that were just right in order to facilitate their creation, their nature is to be flawed regardless. And I don't know, as a person, there's a lot of very wonderful minutia and details that construct, our personhood, our individuality, but sometimes that comes at the expense of being completely blind to other things that are really important to be aware of. So,
yeah, absolutely.
The AVAs as a machine, quote unquote, demonstrate really fundamental facets of being a person. That was the end of the sentence. Of being a person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that made sense. I hope all of that made sense. That was kind of a long, extended thing.
No, I liked it a lot. Yeah, is there anything we can also... So we can touch back sometime and do like another episode too. Essentially, like, whenever you want to talk more about Evangelion, I'm down.
Yeah.
If we were to close out the episode, is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to like plug? If you want to plug like YouTube channel, Instagram, anything like that, I can also have that all in the show notes as well.
I don't know. Everyone should subscribe to the Omnia Sol show. It's really good, and you're very talented. So everybody should check out your video art. Even if they already have, they should do it again because it's really good. So I'm plugging you on your own show. I don't know. Closing notes, I guess. Evangelion is about connecting to people. So if you finish Evangelion and you feel bad about yourself as a person, or you feel bad because you recognize parts of yourself in characters that are deeply flawed, just try to remember that people just want you to be yourself, and they want you to be honest. And you should do that instead of manipulating the entire world into letting you clone your wife so you can have sex with her.
That's such a good way to end the episode. It's also funny because it's like I try to get these episode out on Monday, and I have one last week I ended up releasing on a Sunday just because the episode uploaded way faster than I thought I would. But I have one episode coming out tomorrow, and then so this is scheduled for like next week Monday. But that's such a good like Monday motivation is be yourself to the fullest, be honest, and don't don't take over the world because you can't be honest with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you can't be your best, still just try to be you. It's not about being your
I
best.
love that.
It's about being yourself.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. I think this is going to be a really, really fun episode, and I'll hunt down what the name of that song, but also Ray 2 and whichever the other episode of Asuka losing in battle, and use those 2 tapes and glitch it, and I'll send it your way when it's all done.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Absolutely. All right. We'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Omnia Sol Art Show.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and other words hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, in other words, in other words, I love you. I love you. I love you. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words,